As I write about in my new book, It Takes a Revolution, Forget the Scandal Industry, the three branches of government have become more than corrupt. They have a cancerous, metastasized hold on the American people. They don't respond to the American people. They're not defending the American people. And of course, primary among that are the federal judges. There are some good state judges, for instance, in Florida, but they're electable and they're accountable to the people. But federal judges, as Thomas Jefferson said, would become despots. He predicted that. He was against making a federal judiciary. He posed that part of our Constitution. And in fact, that's what they have become. And we know that they no longer protect us. As Jefferson said, when the people fear the government, there's tyranny, but when the government fears the people, there's liberty. Well, I've been very critical of the federal judges. In fact, I've said figuratively that when the revolution comes, that is the violent revolution, which is coming, and I'm trying to head that off peacefully and legally at Freedom Watch, figuratively speaking, the first to the guillotines should be the federal judges. But occasionally, there's a ray of light. And last Friday, with regard to Chief Justice Roy Moore, my client, my friend, who was defamed by Sasha Cohen on his show, Who is America, by branding him as a pedophile. He's no pedophile. An Obama-appointed African-American judge by the name of Andrew Carter allowed the case to go forward into full discovery, meaning that Sasha Baron Cohen and the rest of the miscreants that work with him will be deposed, will be subject to discovery, and I'm very confident that this case will ultimately wind up in front of a jury of all places, New York City, the bastion of the left. Now, I take my hat off to Judge Carter. He's an honest man. He's done what's right. And I can say that he has more courage than all of the Trump judges I've appeared in front of since Trump became president. And I write about that in my book, Whores. That's my first book, but my second book, It Takes a Revolution, Forget the Scandal Industry. So I want to say something good about somebody, because it's really hard sometimes to find people in the federal judiciary that will do the right thing. There are very, very few. There may be a judge in Alabama, Judge Corey Mace, who does the right thing with regard to Chief Justice Roy Moore, who also was defamed on several occasions. And that case is in front of him right now. But that's important. And let me use that as a segue so you understand that at least before the election, and I would bet the ranch even after the election, there will be no accountability for James Comey, the lovebird Strzok Page, the Obama intelligence czars, Brennan and Clapper, Obama himself, Biden, who obviously did a shakedown, extortionist, excuse me, I'm getting choked up, caper, a RICO enterprise in effect, with the Ukraine shaking down the company Burisma and the Ukrainian government for huge amounts of money to his son Hunter. There will be no justice. Our Attorney General, this worthless, overstuffed establishment Republican hack, talks but does not act. And it's clear that particularly in the days leading up to the election on November 3rd of this year, the presidential election, there won't be any indictments because he's already being vilified and he's reflexive over the fact that people say he's in the hip pocket of Trump. Well, he's not in the hip pocket of Trump, unfortunately. The president is the head of the Justice Department. He's the head of the executive branch agency. And as I've said before, the president needs to be more assertive himself and actually be presidential. And he's not being presidential right now, which is why his ratings are falling. It's why he's at risk of losing in November. Now, I personally, Larry Klayman, support him and want him to succeed. I don't tell people who to vote for as the head of Freedom Watch, but unless he takes action with regard to China, China has destroyed not just our economy, but also the health and welfare and being of the nation. And China needs to be held accountable. It's not enough to just close a consulate in Houston, Texas. The Justice Department, again, with our cowardly Attorney General, should be joining Freedom Watch in our class action against the Communist Chinese in Dallas, Texas, in Jerusalem, Israel, and our criminal complaint at The Hague. They are criminals. The leaders in Beijing are criminals. The president also needs to put his foot forward with regard to these leftists domestic terrorists in the streets. Don't be fooled by the president saying, I've sent agents. They're simply barricaded in buildings, federal courthouses primarily, trying to prevent the destruction of the courthouse. Where are the federal agents that should be going out into public and arresting these people and throwing them in the slammer? Thousands of them, perhaps tens of thousands of them. Just a few weeks ago, they were in Beverly Hills, a neighborhood, saying, eat the rich, putting that on their T-shirts. The president's not being forceful. He's taking advice from the establishment Republican hacks that tell him to get along to go along. I can assure you, Ronald Reagan would not have allowed these domestic terrorists to roam through our streets, to maim, to torture, to kill for even one day. Take a lesson from Ronald Reagan, President. And unless you do so, unless you get your attorney general to actually do something rather than to play political games, it's not enough to try to let General Michael Flynn off the hook, and even that hasn't succeeded. It's not enough to grant commutation of sentence to Roger Stone, and that shouldn't have happened because Roger Stone is, in fact, a convicted criminal. Do something. Actually enforce the law. But they're not going to do that. So you need to support Freedom Watch. Go to freedomwatchusa.org. We are your Justice Department. Share this podcast far and wide. Sign up for our class action against the Communist Chinese. See if you qualify. Support our criminal case in The Hague. Support our cases against social media. Support our cases against the Hollywood elite like Sasha and Cohen. Actually, that's a private case, so that's not part of Judicial Watch. I bring that in my private capacity. You can see that at larryclayman.com. But support the other things that we're doing and play a role in saving this country so we don't get destroyed in a violent revolution which is coming if we don't take strong legal and peaceful action right now, including with our citizens' grand juries. So thank you for listening to me. God bless you. God bless your family. Share this podcast on Spotify, iTunes, Roku, Amazon Fire, the new equivalent of Twitter, Parler, Twitter itself, Facebook, freedomwatchusa.org, and radioamerica.com. And as I do every day, thank Radio America for allowing me to tell the truth as I see it. And I'll be back tomorrow with another special podcast. Until then, thank you for listening to me.
O'Reilly. This is Derek's O'Reilly Auto Parts story.
After the third time jump-starting my car, I finally realized my battery was dying. So I stopped by O'Reilly to have it checked. They tested it right there in the parking lot. It was bad, real bad. But they helped me find the right battery for my car and even installed it for free. Now my car starts like new.
O'Reilly Auto Parts. O'Reilly.
This is Derek's O'Reilly Auto Parts story.
After the third time jump-starting my car, I finally realized my battery was dying. So I stopped by O'Reilly to have it checked. They tested it right there in the parking lot. It was bad, real bad. But they helped me find the right battery for my car and even installed it for free. Now my car starts like new.